Redditors who lost their job because of a post to a social media platform. What happened? Didn't lose my job, but got a stern warning though what I posted was an honest mistake. I worked for a pipeline company that had to perform a specific type of river crossing with explosives. It was all approved by the regulator and stakeholder, but because of the sensitivity of the river and engos in the area, they wanted to keep the video of it on the DL. I was provided a copy of it and wanted to show my dad. I was about 23 and my dad also works in O&G, so I thought he might find it interesting. I couldn't email it, too big, so I uploaded it to what I thought was my private YouTube page and sent him a link. My YouTube page apparently wasn't set to private and my boss got wind of it through a contractor. The name of my YouTube account very obviously pointed to me, and he got pretty pissed at me and told me to take it down. Luckily I learned my lesson early in my career with minimal impact. That is, I didn't get fired and my boss got over it. About posting anything work related on social media. I rarely post about my job or O&G in general on my FB, and I'm very careful about what I post on here too. We had a guy get fired where I work because he posted a video on Facebook of himself outside our plant wearing his uniform snorting Kool-Aid. He was a bit of a clown, so he was just doing it to make people laugh. I think our union may have got him his job back a couple weeks later. Story about hiring someone. I worked as a senior tech for a college help desk. Prior to interviews we Google all candidates mostly to see if their name pops up for anything interesting. We see his Facebook page and his profile picture is him doing a beer bong. Midway through the interview we slide the picture out on the table and continue on like nothing is out of the ordinary. After we finish up questioning we tell him that he should be more careful of what is on social media. 20 minutes later we check again, his Facebook is private. We ended up hiring him. Totally great employee too. This is yet another reason I like living in Nevada. We have a law which explicitly bans employers from taking any action against an employee based on things which are done during their off hours, provided they are legal. Your story is a great example of why social media content shouldn't matter. The guy doing beer bongs in his off time was a great employee. Oh boy, Scarf Tuesday story time. So here's a funny and quite immature story. I'll keep it short and sweet. I worked for a place that has a gift shop. Inside of this gift shop were the most ugly, unwearable scarves on the face of the planet. I was younger and didn't really care about the company or any possible consequences. I started a movement called Scarf Tuesday. Basically, a few of us, on the clock, would meet up at 9 every Tuesday and wear a scarf for a photo on Facebook. These photos started getting likes and people loved them, so we kept going. A few months later, I get pulled into my boss's office. On the wall, I crap you not, are at least 20 of the Scarf Tuesday pictures with the faces blurred out. My boss asks me, to this day, the funniest question I've ever been asked. What do you see here? I smiled and told him it looked like employees wearing scarves. He said he found it hilarious but it was unacceptable and he was disappointed. Apparently somebody watching the cameras wasn't happy and watched us for weeks piling evidence. Everybody, 15 people at least, had similar meetings in the next few days. I didn't get canned right away because we stopped doing Scarf Tuesday, but the retaliation was awful and eventually I was blamed for just about everything that went wrong and got fired. Looking back at it, it was foolish. I fell into a deep depression for a few months because of being unemployed. It helped me grow into a man though, and now I have a full-time managerial job making twice as much. I'll never regret it because it brought me on a path that led to a better life. TLDR. Scarves get you fired. I really don't get what's wrong with this colon. I once had to fire 5 employees in the same day because of a social media post. One of my employees, we'll call him Richard, came to me really worried because he had heard that another employee, Joey, had his new shoes stolen from the employee break room and was worried since he had heard that another employee, Eric, had taken them. When I asked him why, he hesitated and said that Eric had posted a picture of him wearing the same shoes on Instagram the day that Joey's went missing. Joey had come across the picture, and now Richard was worried that there would be a fight or argument because of how angry Joey was. I asked Richard to get me a copy of the photo, as I didn't want to speak to Eric without proof. He told me he didn't have an Instagram, so he wouldn't be able to show me the picture, but he knew Eric's username. He shared the username with me and I checked it out. Sure enough, there he was wearing the exact shoes Joey had described. Dated the same day they went missing. Now, this obviously isn't enough to be sure that he took them, but it was enough that I felt comfortable asking about it in an effort to get the shoes back. However, as I scrolled down a little, another photo caught my eye. It was Eric and 4 more of my employees, looking completely wasted in the employee break room, with a bottle of Jack. They're obviously not allowed to drink on company property. The craziest part was, Richard was in the picture drinking with them. This poor sap was trying to help prevent the other guys from fighting, so he directed me towards the Instagram page, not knowing, since he didn't have one, that there was something incriminating of him on there. 2. Eric apparently hadn't told anyone that he had put it up. They were all working that night, so we had to pull them in one directly after the other, for several hours straight, to fire them each. They all admitted to doing it and it was a huge pain losing all that stuff on the same day. The moral is, don't do stupid crap, and if you do, don't post it on the internet. In my wife's nursing school class, she had a classmate that was kicked out for taking pictures of patients and posting on Instagram. Some were with permission, some were babies, some were not with permission. She was very religious and asking her friends to pray for their healing and such. The thing is, even with the permission of the patients, it's a huge HIPAA violation. She was warned by classmates not to do it. She ignored them, then was found out. Not me, but a girl I went to college with, in the same program as me, interviewed for a position at the school I teach at. The principal loved her, but then we found tweets from her asking to borrow a gun to go to the interview. I teach at an urban, inner city school. It gets worse. She then went on to post a similar status on Facebook, something to the tune of "My ride to work will be all click, click, locking my doors." The principal printed out the tweets and confronted her with them at the final interview. She said they were meant as a joke and the principal stone-face responded, "I'm not laughing." She was blacklisted. She still, 4 years or so later, cannot get a teaching job. I once didn't get a job since I don't have Facebook act. Apparently they wanted to see the kind of person I was, and I told them I like my privacy. I've walked out of an interview because they wanted my Facebook login. I once got fired from a state government job for criticizing a local representative in a letter to the editor in a newspaper. I worked at a small department store. Turns out, one of the employees had an anonymous hate blog about working there. They identified the managers and staff by initials, detailed exactly how he would torture each one, and also gave enough details about the store and themselves that it was simple to figure out who it was. They showed up for work to a police officer who escorted them to the office. They collected their final check and they were banned from that and all other locations. My tutor, an aircraft engineer, told me this. Some guy was using a Genie forklift and ended up scratching the aircraft and caused £40,000 plus of damage, but didn't tell anyone and tried to hide it. The base supervisors asked everyone and they all denied it, but this guy tried to blame my tutor by saying he saw him using it. Nothing happened cause there was no CCTV evidence, but the insurance covered it. Then stupidly a few months later this guy posts on Facebook about how he got away with damaging a plane by blaming it on somebody else. Fired next day. Got accused of stealing money from the staff locker room when I was actually going to the toilet. Flipped my crap. Straight to FB talking about throwing my manager out of the office window. Coming next day to a disciplinary with printouts of the status, lucky they didn't read the comments. I have heard of several teachers lose their jobs due to something they post online. Parents hold teachers to a higher standard than others. Low pay, little respect, and oh yeah, everything you do in public will be scrutinized. I can't understand why there is now a teacher shortage, sir. Not me, but I took a class at my local community college called Foundations of Education. My teacher was telling us about horror stories with teachers and social media. The one that stood out was this girl, about 23 years old, got fired from her first job because of a picture she was tagged in on Facebook. She had a clear Solo cup with a yellow, foamy liquid in it. She was at a party and made a goofy face in the picture. She got fired for drinking at a party even though she was of age to do so. This will probably get buried, but what the heck. I asked for an afternoon off because my best friend was having a cancer scare and he was going to the hospital that afternoon for screening, so I wanted to be there for him. I was very open about why I wanted the time off, and my boss said I could take the time off, as long as I took it and paid instead of using it as vacation time. I went and met my friend at the hospital, but he was almost done, and since I was cleared for the day, I took him out for a drink, like you do when someone thinks they have cancer. He checked us in on Facebook. I legitimately wasn't trying to hide anything. I wasn't trying to sneak around. So my boss calls me in the next morning and has my Facebook up on his monitor. I was friends with a co-worker who had turned me in. I explained what had happened, and he still fired me on the spot. The aftermath was that when I filed for unemployment, we had to go to a hearing and explain the whole situation to a judge, who basically told him that he was insane. So there you go. I managed to get a warning at work when a colleague was interviewed for a promotion and mentioned that investigation work was a strength. She then proceeded to prove her investigation skills by telling management I'd threatened to shoot the place up. My FB post had actually said, "Kids are winding me up. I've spoken to them and given a warning shot." She didn't get the job, and I successfully appealed the warning on the grounds of common sense. Kid on my college baseball team got kicked off for tweeting song lyrics. My redneck coach read it out loud to the team and yelled that if the kid was dating his daughter and he saw the kid tweet stuff like that, he would take him into the Ocala National Forest and bury him where nobody would ever find him. Then we had to run. Oh frick, of course it's Alachua County. Another not me but a co-worker I knew post. A few years back, there was this woman who was the secretary to my employer's vice president. Sometimes she'd be asked to cover the president's CEO's secretary's position if she, CEO's secretary, was out sick. She also oversaw manage the front receptionist and file room clerk positions. She thought she was over anyone who had the title of administrative assistant, even if it was specifically for a particular department. Several times she tried to get me to do something outside of my department, when I had a million other things in my own department that I had to do. One time when I was doing something for her, my boss asked what I was doing. I explained to him, and he went off on the VP secretary. She tried to say that the file clerk was busy with one thing, and the front desk receptionist was busy with another thing, but my immediate boss wouldn't hear of it. After that, I never heard one peep out of her. Now, back to what got her fired. She apparently had been fussed at over something by the CEO or one of his daughters, who also work at the company, family owned. She went to MySpace, back when it was popular, and posted a long rant about the CEO, his daughters, the CEO's secretary, the VP, and several other people. She posted about how things are handled at the company, and other crap. She was friends with a few co-workers, and I think it was one of those co-workers who printed out the post and gave it to one of the daughters or the CEO. When I came into work, I found out she'd been fired. It was a huge relief for a lot of us. She'd been nothing but a B to a lot of people, thinking just because she oversaw the front desk and file room, she had power over all other administrative assistant secretaries. After she was fired, I think the IT manager took over the front desk and file room, but he kept it pretty much just front desk and file room. He never bothered me about doing something extra like making up binders for a certification class to be taught there, or help set up for some outdoor event we were having. Used to have one every year, or anything of that nature. Only time I've ever interacted with him was when it involved my computer or the department's printer. Not myself, but a co-worker lost his job for a Facebook post. He told his boss he had to leave work early one day, due to his wife and child being involved in a serious car wreck about 3 hours away. The next day he called and said wife was in ICU and child was in serious condition. That night boss saw on Facebook where employee's wife posted that they were at home watching movies and getting drunk. Called him in the next day, and employee refused, saying she was still in hospital. Boss told him he had printouts of the Facebook post and fired him over the phone. I worked in a cinema, and someone posted to a local subreddit asking how to sneak their 18M girlfriend, 17F, into an 18 rated film. I suggested that the person with it bought their ticket at the ticket office, red ticket, and the person without it bought theirs at the automated ticket machine. Blue ticket. Now the staff on the floor know to check it for blue tickets, because red tickets would be checked at the time of sale. So if they then swap tickets so that the person without it had the red ticket, and the person with the blue ticket had it, they should both be able to get in. Long story short, a customer saw the post, and then emailed the franchise I worked for, and since my city only has 2 cinemas in it, and I had posts of my tattoos in my profile history, they figured out who it was. I was asked to go to the office on Halloween night, made more enjoyable by the fact I was dressed as Han Solo with a Nerf gun. I then had to go to a disciplinary meeting and was told the result of the investigation was that I would be fired. A social media policy was shortly after enforced more strictly. Not me, but I know someone who's trying to get a job in tech and doesn't understand that her very public searchable Twitter page where she talks about how the world would be better off without white people might make her sound like a horrible employee. And if you Google her real name, tons of hate pages documenting the last decade or so of her online life pop up where she's accused of harassing others. And yes, she applied to Twitter. I've brought the topic up once, but she insists that anyone reasonable would understand that she's just venting, blowing off steam, and wouldn't take it seriously, and that employers don't do basic background checks, and also that accessing someone's public social media page is harassment and stalking. I know someone who worked at a bank. A famous football player lost a bet and called in some type of money transfer to pay it off, and she posted it all over FB with his full name, amount he lost, how stupid he was for betting that much, etc. She also later posted my personal business on Facebook after I'd met her a total of 2 times, so guess that was pretty par for the course. First time post, so if this ends up responding weird, oops. I was fired from a nightclub security job for posting on Facebook. We had provided our bar for a large frat party. This group had tried reserving space at a number of other bars in my city because of their over-the-top wild antics, but my owners decided to let them come because, well, money. Flash forward to midnight. We had 3 tables and a couch broken, and 2 female staff sexually assaulted. After I had just broken up a fight, I took one of the involved to the kitchen to help him get cleaned up. He was not the aggressor, but since he had a broken nose and was bleeding, we had to call an ambulance for him. Out of nowhere he decides to spit a mouthful of blood into my mouth mid-conversation. I had just had my wisdom teeth out, so I had open wounds in my mouth. Needless to say, my owners and my boss urged me to go get tested for any diseases carried in the blood, including HIV. So, after the most hellish night experienced, a few of us posted about it on Facebook. Our owners saw multiple postings, but apparently mine was the only one to warrant termination. A common name of frat should go die in a fire. Lost it due to LinkedIn. Boss wanted to control what I had on it. I told him I was not comfortable with him trying to dictate my social account, and that's how I became unemployed. Not me, but another former coworker. I don't know if you've ever worked at a gamestop, but you tend to know everyone at your gamestop and also neighboring gamestops. They love to mix around employees when they need them at other stores. We had a girl who worked with us that is basically one of those. I play video games and I want to be friends with everyone else who plays video games too, but I want to talk about how awesome I am because I play video games. Because of this, she was friends with every manager in our general area, about 5 gamestops. She was also the type of girl who repeatedly made fun of other girls for playing video games because she didn't like to share attention from guys, and I eventually had to delete her from Facebook because of the harassment she and her friends would dish out every time I mentioned liking a new game. Anyways, a bunch of games ended up getting stolen. We had some bins of just the discs and yellow sleeves at her store where she worked as an assistant manager, and she made a post along the lines of, "So, someone just stole Grand Theft Auto, Need for Speed, Stealth Oops and some other games. I didn't see them steal it, but anyone want to play a game of Guess the Race? BTW, we live in a predominantly black city and one of our other assistant managers was black. She was let go that same week. Incredibly late to the party, but I am enrolled for co-op through my school and I was called in for a meeting in which I thought I was offered a job. Turns out I was blacklisted for 3 companies because I had tweeted a picture of me blackout drunk hammered to be funny, not even considering the consequences. Stupid college. And I lost out on all opportunities. She said I wouldn't have gotten one too. Lesson learned. Animal services officer here. A post had gone viral about somebody who bragged on Facebook about beating her cat when it scratched her. It turned out it was in our jurisdiction. And thanks to the power of fanatical animal rights activists, we were given the abuser's full name, address, telephone number, and even place of work. So because she admitted to being scratched by the cat, we had the grounds to seize it so it could undergo a 10-day quarantine period. Meanwhile, she's being issued death threats galore by the aforementioned fanatical animal rights activists. In fact, they're going so far as to threaten her family members too, who were otherwise totally uninvolved in the case. So what do I do once the cat's in our custody? I snap a picture of it while it's in its kennel back in the restricted quarantine area of the shelter, and I reply to one of the viral Facebook posts demanding action against the cat's owner with the picture, stating we have her now, to ensure the fanatics that she's safe. Well, that absolutely and somehow unexpectedly blew up all over the place, and within the hour, a screenshot of my comment had gone viral too. So I took it down and hoped that would be that. I had the next day off, but I got a phone call from a cop local to the city I worked in. Hi, is this my name? Yes. Do you use the name, my FB pseudonym, on Facebook? Yes. Turns out the viral screenshot had made its way back to the cat's owner, and now she's threatening to sue me for slander and sue the shelter city for letting the picture from a restricted area leak. No lawsuits ended up being filed, but I called the shelter and gave them the heads up as to what happened. 2 days later I was fired. I ended up suspending that FB account, which I had had since 2004, and started a new one. I was getting too many requests and notifications from the fanatics. As a result of all that, I spent the last 4 months unemployed and without the option of earning unemployment money due to the circumstances which led to my being fired. I'm employed at another shelter now, though, closer to home. They know about what happened at the other place. My former supervisor even wrote for me a letter of recommendation which helped me nab this job. I was not fired, but a co-worker took a picture of me while I was on a smoke break and posted it on Facebook. She tagged the store location and myself. Just for having a cigarette in my mouth I got talked to and she got fired. I worked in the media industry, and I got fired over Facebook profile information. My former boss looked me up on FB and discovered the work section, which stated basically I had a crappy job and a crappy income, amongst other things, on my not so serious profile. It was completely unrelated to the position firm I was working in. He tried to strong-arm me to sign a termination agreement. I turned that offer down, cause it would have taken away all legal rights I had at the time. I live in Germany, and if you're an apprentice, you got special law protection. It's pretty much being irredeemable. I sued him. Won the first instance. He appealed, and he won the second instance. 80-year-old judge, FML. It gathered quite some buzz in the media over here. Not me, but one of my good friends is a registered nurse. She posted on Facebook after working in the pediatric ward during practicum. All these screaming babies are good birth control. She was called in by HR at the hospital, and since she wasn't technically an employee since she was a student nurse, she was just reprimanded verbally. A year later, when she was finished and had applied to the health region, they told her that her name was flagged for unprofessional, inappropriate behavior and they would not be hiring her. Where we live, the health region covers the entire city and at least 30-45 minutes out all around the city. She ended up having to move to a different city to get a job. LPT for social media. 1. Don't call in and then host cookout, garage sale, or PPV party. 2. Racial, religious, or personal slander will be passed on in gossip. 3. Assume someone from work will read everything you post eventually, maybe not this job even but the next higher paying one. 4. If you don't have a social media account, create one. Never post, and only add friends who you would introduce a smoking hot out of your league first date to if seen in public. It gives you a safe out in case someone tries to troll you or you have the misfortune to share a name with the Satan incarnate. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.